So there I was, thinking about the last few Pokemon challenges I had done when I started feeling a little bit random. I used to do randomized Nuzlocks in my free time for fun without even making content out of them, which sounds illegal to me now, but I figured it was time to give it a shot. So this is going to be my attempt at a hardcore Nuzlocke of Alpha Sapphire using only shiny random Pokemon. Yes, that's right, I will be shiny hunting for every single encounter, but you should know that I have boosted the odds because I would like to finish this run before my 1-year-old daughter graduates from high school. I've made a few other tweaks to the game to spice things up, but we'll cover those later. If you enjoy this content and you want to see more, please consider leaving a like and subscribing if you're new here. I'm on my way to 100K and I'm hoping to get there before the end of the year, so help me out with that. Also, if you could change the ability of any Pokemon to any other ability to make that Pokemon absolutely cracked, what Pokemon would it be and what new ability would you pick? For me, I think I would just do Noivern a solid and give it Contrary. Combine that with Draco Meteor and its insane speed stat, and the Bat Dragon would absolutely bang. Okay, let's not waste any more time, let's get into the run. Fun fact about me, I've never once played the girl character in a Pokemon game, but I was feeling random, so I guess today is the day. Welcome Vivid, only she's a lady. I make my way to the starters, and oh man, we have an absolute smattering of Pokemon to pick from here. We have Turtwig, Dino, and Horsey, and to keep things on theme, I randomly selected Turtwig. So we're starting off the game with an actual starter, which is pretty neat. After a decent bit of soft resetting, I finally get a shiny little leaf turtle, and I name him Ivern. As always, my nicknames are following a theme, and the only hint I'll give you about this theme is it is responsible for some of the most salt-inducing moments in my life. If you know the theme, let me know in the comments down below. Good luck. We take on the first rival fight and somehow manage to squeak out a win after forgetting to heal before the fight and Ivern living a critical hit on just 1 HP. And I feel like this is probably a good omen for the run. We might be able to get through this whole thing deathless. All right, so right off the bat, we have a million encounters to get out of the way. So we catch a shiny Seedot named Zyra, Swinub named Trundle, a Weedle named Vayne, a Shroomish named Maokai, and finally a Phoebus that I named Nami. I'm just going to spoil this now. I never figure out how to evolve the Feebas, so it spends basically the entire game in the box. From here on, I won't cover every single encounter, just the ones that contribute in some way or another to the run, but I will show you all of the shinies I've caught at the end of the run. After just a little bit, Weedle evolves into Kakuna and then almost immediately into a Beedrill. Right outside of Petalburg Woods, I find a shiny Slugma with the ability Drought that I catch and name Annie. Also, now you know, one of the tweaks I made to spice things up is I randomized all abilities in the game. So this is what I'm working with so far. I have an Immunity Feebas, a Flare Boost Seedot, a Volt Absorb Shroomish, a Serene Grace Turtwig, Drought Slugma, Solid Rock Beedrill, and Defiant Trundle. The big standout here is Drought Slugma, which makes this little lava slug actually usable and hopefully even good. And let's just get this out of the way right now because I feel like I would really be passing up an opportunity otherwise. Slugma nuts. Okay, alright, moving on. Ground items in this game are also randomized, so I get pretty lucky and find a Master Ball on Route 116 above Petalburg, and I catch a shiny Pidgey here that I can't seem to find the clip of, but trust me, I have a shiny Pidgey from this route. Zyra evolves into Nuzleaf, and now it's time for the first gym. We head to Roxanne and challenge her, leading off with Shroomish and Slugma into her Delibird and Clefairy, and oh, what's that you're saying? This isn't normally a double battle? Well, yeah, I also made every battle in the game a double battle, with randomized Pokemon that have random abilities, and on top of that, all gym leaders have a full team of 6. Surprise, surely nothing can go wrong since I did this. This will not make the games any harder, I swear. The Oris remakes are notoriously easy. Anyway, back to the battle. On the first turn, I double into Delibird with a Leech Seed and Ember, and the seeds connect after Slugma takes a present for about a quarter of its health. But the Clefairy outspeeds my Slug and lands a 55% accurate Sing to put it to sleep. I switch Shroomish into Swinub and hope Slugma gets the next turn wake up, but after taking another hard-hitting present, it just remains asleep. If you don't mind me just cutting to the chase here, I do some switching around and eventually bring in Beedrill to poison the Delibird, which just keeps doing so much damage to my team with its presence. The Delibird eventually falls to its poison and is replaced by Ducklet, which is great because this Pokemon is terrible, or at least I thought it was until it dodged several focus energy boosted Fury attacks from my Beedrill, which ultimately led to Bee dying to getting doubled up on by a wing attack and double slap. Rest in peace, Beedrill, we hardly knew you. I send Turtwig out to replace his fallen ally, and the combination of Razor Leaf and Mega Drain is enough to take out both the Ducklet and Clefairy in one turn, bringing out Snubbull and Trubbish. I keep chipping away with Razor Leaf for the spread damage and Leech Seed the Trubbish for some passive recovery, and while the Snubbull doesn't do much, the bag of actual garbage sets up Toxic Spikes, meaning anything I switch in from here on out will get poisoned. I'm able to chip the duo down, eventually KOing the Snubbull, bringing in Roxanne's last Pokemon, Onix, which is actually kind of fitting here. My team is pretty worn down at this point, but I still managed to snag a quick KO on the Rock Snake, but not before it connects a Rock Tomb on my Nuzleaf, which ultimately leads to her getting KO'd from a double up into that slot with an Acid Spray from Trubbish. Shortly after, I'm able to take out the trash, but yeesh, we won our first badge, but we also managed to rack up 2 deaths in our very first gym fight, which is something I don't think has happened to me for a very long time. Not a fantastic start. From here we can head straight to the next gym, but not before getting a whole slew of new encounters, which is actually much needed because with each gym leader having 6 Pokemon and every battle being a double battle, overleveling is going to be pretty common at times. Let's speedrun these encounters really quickly. A shiny Bulbasaur I named Gromp, a shiny Poochyena I named Warwick, a shiny Skiploom I named Lulu, and finally a shiny Pichu that I named Kennen. Bulbasaur and Lulu have the Tinted Lens and Prankster abilities respectively, which are both insane, and the puppy and the electric rat have Shield Dust and Mummy, which are fine. Now, with some new team members, it's time to bust up the second gym. I challenge Broly and lead with Skiploom and Slugma into a Chinchou and Burmy, which feels perfect since I get to set up the sun and can shut down both of his Pokemon easily. On the first turn, I go for a sick Sun Boosted Incinerate for spread damage and a Prankster Sleep Powder into his Chinchou, but Sleep Powder misses. Burmy outspeeds the rest of the field and goes for a Bide, and Incinerate doesn't do much damage to either Pokemon because, surprise, the Burmy is actually a Gumi with Imposter, which is both terrible for us and kind of hilarious. The fish paralyzes Skiploom, and now we are in a terrible position. On the next turn, I assume an Incinerate plus Fairy Wind will be able to take the Gumi out before it can unleash its energy from Bide, but Skiploom gets fully paralyzed, meaning the Gumi lives the turn and will one-shot any Pokemon on the next turn with priority. So I switch Slugma into Poochyena to protect it, hoping that it will target that slot, but instead, the Bide is unleashed into my other slot, taking Skiploom out, which is really tough because I was so stoked to use this little prankster plant. Over the next few turns, I'm able to mostly ignore the Gumi while taking out Broly's team with Bites plus Powdered Snows from Poochyena and Swinub, dropping the Chinchou and a Drowsy this way. Then Slugma and the mystery Pidgey I mentioned earlier, his name is Draven, are able to finish off the fight with no more casualties, dropping a Gumi, Burmy, Oddish, and finally a Vulpix. Okay, this is really not going great. I don't think I've let an enemy Pokemon KO one of my team members with Bide since I was a child playing Red and Blue and fought Brock, but the imposter really just got me here. Still, we made it through, securing the second badge, and with that level increase, I'm able to evolve Poochyena and Turtwig into Mightyena and Grottle respectively. Next, we get our first real taste of Team Aqua, but we absolutely blow through the grunts, and Blue Jack Sparrow shows up, mumbles something about water, and then leaves. In the route north of Slateport City, I find a shiny Horsey, catch her, and name her Alawi, and look at how absolutely disgusting this Pokemon is. She might not be much right now, but Jolly Nature plus the Moxie ability is absolutely going to wreck later when I can evolve her into a Kingdra. What an amazing catch. Pidgey then evolves into Pidgeotto, and it's time for the infamous rival fight. Only I guess I forgot to set the other important battles besides gym leaders to have full teams, so Brendan only has 3 Pokemon. He leads off with Beedrill and Krogunk, which Ivysaur and Slugma make quick work of thanks to Sleep Powder and Sun Boosted Incinerates. Then his ace Zweilous gets put to sleep and eventually just falls to getting doubled into over and over again since I don't really have anything to hit this Pokemon with super effectively. We then make our way into and immediately out of Mauville and find a beautiful shiny Dragonair who I catch and name Aurelion Soul. He has competitive as his ability, which is actually pretty neat, and I just love Dragonite, so late game I'm hoping this Pokemon will really pop off. With our new team members, we head into the third gym and challenge Watson. This is normally where I narrate the Wally fight, but we can just skip all interactions with him until the end of the game because I dumpster, that kid. He has a Wurmple and a Caterpie. I feel like we should be pointing and laughing at him, honestly. Back to Watson. I lead off with Grotle and Dragonair into his Go-Goat and a very on-brand Voltorb, and on the first turn, Watson just lowers my team's stats with Screech and Tail Whip, while Dragon Rage into the Goat drops it low, and a follow-up Razor Leaf misses the sentient Pokeball, but is enough to body bag his four-legged friend. Snorunt comes in and lands a critical hit Ice Shard on Dragonair, dropping him low, and Voltorb goes for a second Screech but misses. Then another Dragon Rage plus Razor Leaf are enough to take the Snorunt out and leave the Voltorb in the yellow. Gulpin comes out next, and not wanting to risk Dragonair, I switch into Slugma, setting up the Sun. Another Razor Leaf takes the Voltorb out, but just tickles the Gulpin, who lands a critical hit Sludge on my Lava Slug for a good chunk. Phantump is sent out, and on the next turn, Incinerate is able to absolutely gutter it and leave Gulpin in the yellow, forcing Watson to send out his Ace, which just so happens to be a Mega Medicham. I know it doesn't have pure power, but this is still an insanely strong Pokemon compared to my team right now. I double switch into Pikachu and Pidgeotto, and this turn does not go well for me. Pikachu takes a Force Palm to 6 HP, then Gulpin lands a Poison Gas on both of my Pokemon, and after the end of turn damage, Pikachu is left at just 1 HP, and me without a real plan. I quick attack into the Gulpin, hoping to make the fight a 2v1 and switch Pikachu out for Mightyena, but Gulpin lives on what must be 1 HP, and my Hyena Wolf hybrid takes infinity damage from a Force Palm and Sludge on the switch in, meaning I have to switch out again or lose a team member. I quick attack the Gulpin, hoping to finally take it out and send out Grotle, but Watson uses a super potion that I forgot he had access to, and Grotle also takes infinity damage and gets paralyzed. So basically, I think I'm gonna wipe here. I try one more time to find a good switch by sending in Slugma, but Watson doesn't even respect the Slugma nuts joke and just takes him out with a Force Palm. While Pidgeotto keeps chipping it down. I send in Dragonair, and we are truly living on a prayer here. I lock into my attacks on the next turn, and by a miracle, Watson Force Palms the Pidgeotto slot, which claims another KO for him, but lets my Dragon get the revenge kill with a Dragon Rage. Gulpin follows up with a Sludge that poisons, leaving Dragonair at 2 HP, so in an abundance of caution, I send out Mightyena and switch out Dragonair into Pikachu on the next turn as a sacrifice, and 2 bites are enough to pick up the kill. 3 deaths in this gym alone. This run is absolutely spiraling. Thankfully, shortly after, I receive the gift of a shiny Delibird, and I catch and name him Ziggs. And while normally this Pokemon is terrible, I knew something was up when it kept slapping me around in the first gym, and as it turns out, its ability has been randomized to pure power, which makes this normally terrible bird hit like a truck. So even though I never do this, I utilize some in-game move tutors to give this bird an actual moveset, and he joins the team. If it makes you mad that I decided to use the move tutors here, I want you to weigh the pros and cons of this decision. Pros, I get to use a souped up Delibird. Cons, there are none. I don't care about your opinion. Moving on. I catch a shiny Skarmory outside Meteor Falls that I name Rakan, and Shroomish finally evolves into Breloom. Then we have some pretty uneventful encounters with Team Aqua, both in Meteor Falls and on Mount Chimney, but Archie has a full team of 6, so I didn't entirely scuff the randomization, just the rival fights. After stopping Archie from, I don't know, I think trying to modify a meteorite to be a megastone or something that sounds completely harmless, I find a shiny Scorpy, catch it, and this Pokemon is actually blessed with the ability Levitate, which means when it evolves in a Drapion, it will have no weaknesses, something I think could be very useful for us later. I name him Skarner. But for now, it's Gym 4 time, baby. Now, I've got some good news and some bad news about the Flannery fight. The good news is that Delibird, Skarmory, and Breloom absolutely demolished this gym. It was not even close. The only time I felt kind of threatened was when I had Delibird out in front of a Durant using Metal Claw. The bad news is I absolutely demolished this gym, and the fight wasn't particularly interesting. So we'll just show the KO compilation here and move on. With the 4th badge secured, I find a shiny Teddiursa, catch her, and name her Sejuani. She has the Aroma availability, which is mostly useless, but she'll hit hard, which is appreciated. I evolve her immediately into an Ursaring, and now, you know what time it is. The 4th and 5th gyms are literally back to back, and like I've done a lot this run, I have to shuffle around my team to stay under the level cap. So, with some new faces, I head in and challenge my dad, leading off with Ursaring and Delibird into to his Kyogre and Shelgon. And I don't know what the odds of this are, but Kyogre's randomized ability is Drizzle. I legitimately hate it here. On turn 1, Kyogre outspeeds and drowns Delibird with a critical hit Aqua Tail, so we're off to a fantastic start. Ursaring bulldozes the field for a small amount of damage, but importantly lowers Kyogre's speed, and then she takes a soft headbutt from Shelgon. I send an Ivysaur who, thanks to bulldoze, outspeeds and puts the Kyogre to sleep with a sleep powder, and then chunk it with a slash. On the next turn, we drop the Kyogre, and get this, it is replaced with a Palkia. Oh man, this fight is going insanely well. Ivysaur manages to live a Dragon Claw on the next turn and put it to sleep with a sleep powder, but then the Shelgon finishes him off with a crunch, forcing me to send in Breloom. Thankfully, my 2 Pokemon are able to finish off the second legendary on good old dad's team, but the random attacks from Shelgon have added up and both my Pokemon are at about half health. Then, what does Norman do? He sends in a Mega Swampert as a replacement, and then lands a critical hit headbutt with this dumbass Shelgon to take out my Breloom. I do not understand how I am supposed to get around this fight. I send in Skarmory, and in a moment of good luck, Ursaring's Quick Claw activates, letting her move first to take out the Swampert with a slash, but a follow-up headbutt leaves her with just a sliver of health. Then, and I cannot make this up, to replace the Mega Swampert, Norman sends out a Mega Lucario. It's just humorous at this point, honestly, how terrible the odds are stacked against me in this battle. Another blessing of a Quick Claw activation procs, letting Ursaring finally take out the Shelgon and chunk the Lucario for half its health with another bulldoze. But it's her last hurrah as Lucario claps back with a power-up punch. I'm down to my last 2 Pokemon, so I send in Dragonair, and finally, Norman sends in a reasonable Pokemon, a Wartortle. Dragonair is able to outspeed and take the Lucario out with a Dragon Rage, and from here, the Wartortle is easy to pick off in a 2v1. But in this single battle, I lost so many stellar Pokemon, and honestly, I don't even think we would have made it out of the battle without those lucky Quick Claw activations. This gym was a massacre, but thankfully, we now have access to the other half of the map, so we have a chance to rebuild because we have a ton of encounters. I do the required Steven mission next, where you help out either Latios or Latios, and he gives you one of them at the end, and I'm rewarded with a non-shiny Slowbro holding its Mega Stone. Now you might be asking, what is Slowbro? One of the slowest Pokemon in the game's ability? It is Speed Boost. Of course, it's Speed Boost. I mean, it might be kind of usable if I ever find a shiny to hold the stone, but it's pretty hilarious. We start the rebuild by catching a shiny Monferno I named Wukong and a shiny Seviper I named Singed. Wukong has Cute Charm, which is a pretty miserable ability, and Singed has Prankster, which is actually pretty dope when you combine it to Seviper's access to the move Glare. Then both Grotle and Swinub evolve into Torterra and Piloswine respectively, and we kind of breeze through the Weather Institute in the next rival fight, so let's just skip those for time and move on to Fortree City. We have to catch up with Steven again, and he gives us a bootleg Sylph Scope so we can identify the hidden Pokemon outside of the next gym, and in doing so, I find and catch a shiny Rhyhorn. I name her Talia, and she has the Analytic ability, which is actually pretty sweet since she's so slow. With our bootleg scope, we unlock the 6th gym, so I run through it and charge up Winona. I lead off with my Torterra and Skarmory into her Frostlass and Lumineon. I put a Yachi Berry on my Torterra as soon as it evolved, so I stay in and start spamming Earthquake plus Air Cutter for spread damage. And this mashup of moves is so effective that we quickly blow through Winona's first 3 Pokemon, forcing her to send out Chansey and Cherim on a double down turn. Another Earthquake takes Chansey down to its sturdy, but then it lands a Sing, putting my Torterra to sleep. Skarmory takes out the Cherim, bringing out her final Pokemon Lunatone, and Chansey starts setting up minimizes, which is not ideal. Torterra gets low, so I switch him into Dragonair, but on the switch in, Lunatone lands a critical hit Psychic that almost ends him. But I'm finally able to pick off the Chansey with Skarmory, so you know, silver linings. I double into Piloswine, and now that we're 2v1, it's pretty easy to pick off the Lunatone, and bonus Jonas, Monferno evolves into Infernape after the battle. An evolution and a deathless gym in this economy? I must be a billionaire. With the 6th badge, my level cap really opens up a ton, so I do some hunting and find a shiny Darumaka and catch her. I name her Shyvana, and when I go to check out her ability, I see that she has Pure Power. That means I will have access to a Pure Powered Darmanitan, which is a terrifying sentence that I don't think anyone should ever utter. Darmanitan already has a base attack of like 140 or something, so after the Pure Power boost, its already disgusting attack stat will be sky high. I just have to wait for her to evolve. We head to Mount Pyre, where Team Aqua is being real sketchy and stealing from an elderly couple, so I beat them down, and after doing so, Piloswine finally evolves
evolves into Mamoswine and should be an absolute monster moving forward. I catch a shiny Piplup in Mount Pyre and name her Quinn, and with the new level cap, she can immediately evolve into Primplup, then straight into Empoleon, meaning I now have access to all 3 fully evolved Hoenn starters. What? Which is just neat. I get into a little scuffle with a random trainer, but no big deal since I have the now monstrous Mamoswine. Only I guess that doesn't matter because he misses his Mud Bomb and then takes a Parental Bond boosted Fire Blast and a Vital Throw from a Pansear and a Pancham and just dies. I high-key hate it here, but if Mamoswine was going to die to a tiny monkey and a tiny panda, whatever, survival of the fittest, I guess. This is not the Hoenn region I love, it is scary here. Off to the deaded box with you. After Mamoswine dies, our rival ambushes us again, but we wipe the floor with him. He just never really got off the ground with his random team, and Torterra and Skarmory dumpster his entire squad. Then the Team Aqua story starts happening, so we head back to Slateport just to watch Team Aqua steal a submarine, then we infiltrate their base, wreck a ton of grunts, and beat down the giant admin who could certainly just fist fight us if he wanted. And now, it's time to head to the 7th gym. But as a quick buzzer beater before the battle, our Scorpy from so long ago evolves into a Drapion, meaning I now have a really solid Pokemon with 0 weaknesses and 2 immunities that we can abuse. Nice. So Gym 7 is always a double battle, but it's also always insanely easy, so let's see if that's any different. I lead off with Infernape and Torterra into Hawlucha and Cacturn, and I'm about to blow your mind. On the first turn, I have Infernape go for a Fire Pledge, and since he's the fastest Pokemon on the field, I had Torterra go for a Grass Pledge, and he gets to move before anything else, and the 2 moves combine into a 150 base power move that sets up a Sea of Flames that will damage all enemy Pokemon on the field for 1/8 of their HP over the next 4 turns. This is a wombo combo, and I love it. The Hawlucha does manage to live though, and goes for a bounce, and since both of my Pokemon are weak to flying, I double switch into Empoleon and Drapion. Drapion takes the incoming bounce fairly well, but an incoming Energy Ball does a little bit more than I'm comfortable with to my big penguin. The Hawlucha dies to the Sea of Flames, bringing in Jellicent, but Drapion and Skarm basically perfectly counter the Cactus and Jellyfish, so a Fly and a Night Slash grab a double KO on the next turn. Light and Taza send out Bisharp and Crustle, and since Skarm and Drapion have both taken some pretty serious damage, I pull a double switch and go back out into Torterra and Infernape, tanking an Assurance from the Bisharp, and then Crustle sets up a Shell Smash, which is terrifying. Thankfully, Wukong still outpaces the Crustle, so another Pledge combo sends this ugly bug to the Shadow Realm and sets up another Sea of Flames. Late and Tyza send out their final Pokemon, Gothitelle, and from here a Mach Punch into the Bisharp grabs that KO, and 2 Grass Pledges is enough to drop the Goth Girlfriend, winning us the 7th badge and kicking off the story section of the game. Team Aqua somehow shoots an unexplained massive beam of light into the sky, and now we have to dive to the underwater cavern to chase them down. But all of that is so boring, so let's just skip to the part where Darumaka and Rhydon evolve into Darmanitan and Rhydon, and then the part where Archie is trying to resurrect a water demon, but promises to stop if I can dumpster him in a fight. Now this fight is terrifying because we know Archie will have a Mega, but we have no clue what it will be. Still, I challenge Captain Jack Sparrow but blue and lead off with Darmanitan and Seviper into his Tyranitar and Whiscash. This is a terrible lead for me, however, since both of my Pokemon are weak to ground, so I double switch and bring in Drapion and Skarmory, and these switch-ins are almost free since Skarm just has his speed lowered with a Scary Face and then takes a light tap from his Zen Headbutt. I start setting up Toxic Spikes and targeting down the Tyranitar with Steel Wings, and on the next turn while the Kaiju just spins its wheels and the fish keeps going for soft attacks, I take the T-Tar out with another Steel Wing, bringing in Staraptor. The Whiscash just keeps chipping away at my Pokemon with Muddy Waters, so I switch Drapion out while Skarmory uses Fly, and I'm not really sure what I was thinking here because I bring in Talia and she just dies to the Muddy Water. This was such a big punt, and I don't even know what I was doing here, honestly. Skarmory takes out Whiscash after with a Fly, and I send in Darmanitan as Archie sends out Kabutops, which seems like it would be a bad matchup, but this Darmanitan is disgusting. I switch Skarmory into Seviper on the next turn so he doesn't die, but Kabutops is already locked into Aqua Jet on that slot since the AI saw a kill, letting Darm freely one-shot the Kabutops with a Hammer Arm. From this spot, every Pokemon Archie sends out is weak to Darmanitan, and Staraptor is managed with a Prankster-boosted Glare from Seviper. So Darm runs through the rest of Archie Archie's team because, surprise, his Mega is an Abomasnow, who is conveniently slow and 4 times weak to fire. So we dumpster Archie, but being the scallywag he is, he summons the water demon anyway, and now it's up to us to save the world from drowning. It's always, how are you gonna save the world in these games? And never simply, how are you feeling today? How's your mental? Alas, duty calls. We make our way down to what I can only assume is the core of the planet, which seems like a wildly unsafe place for a preteen, and challenge Kyogre. I'm terrified to see what it has been randomized to, and okay, you know what? There's something so fitting about this all-powerful legendary Pokemon being randomized to what has to be one of the most forgettable bug types of all times. So we put the little goober in the ground and just move on. We saved the world, and now, as I always say, we can move on with more important things like beating the game. At this point, I found a Dragonstone, so I evolved Horsey into Seadra, then Seadra into Kingdra, and I am stoked because I have a really dope set in mind for this Pokemon. Now, we can challenge the final gym, and I'm gonna shoot straight with you. I was in a bit of a silly, goofy mood, so I lead with Infernape and Torterra and just shred through the majority of Wallace's team with the Pledge combo. Vespiquen, Venomoth, Volbeat, and Rampardos all just put in the ground by my starter duo. I let a Hypno chill on the field the entire battle because I think it was broken. It just kept clicking Psych Up to get 0 boosts, and I finally switched Infernape out after Wallace sent out his ace, a Golurk. But Torterra and Dragonair were able to easily finish the fight with a Grass Pledge that left the Golurk with just a sliver, and it did me the favor of offing itself by using Curse. And finally, on the next turn, I spit on the Hypno to finish it off, winning us the 8th badge, and now it's just all gas, no brakes to the Elite Four, baby. Let's win this game. Before taking on Victory Road, I go back to the Cave of Origin, or wherever it is that you find Kyogre. I don't remember the name, and I'm not nerdy enough to look it up right now, and I find and catch a shiny Haunter that I name Nocturne. I immediately evolve them into a Gengar, and finally I am able to evolve Dragonair into Dragonite. And with these 2 additions, I genuinely think this is the most broken team I have ever taken to the end game of one of these runs, which is great because we're at like 69 deaths or something right now. The last roadblock before the Pokemon League is Wally, so I lead off with Gengar and Skarmory into Magnezone and Kricketune, and on the first turn, I Mega Evolve my Gengar because, surprise, I found this Mega Stone a while back. Ground items are also randomized, and I use Substitute while Skarmory starts setting up spikes. But this turn goes terribly wrong for me since the Magnezone just discharges, almost killing Skarmory and paralyzing him and breaking my Gengar's sub. Gengar gets to show off its super dope ability, which is Moody, but this puts me in a tough spot, so I double switch into the old reliable Infernape and Torterra and absolutely mow through Wally's team. His Mega Gallade was randomized into a Mega Lopunny, but notice I use the word was randomized because Infernape made it very past tense with a close combat. And with that out of the way, it's time for the scariest part of this run, the Elite Four. I fully believe my team is busted, but let's take a look at what I'm not bringing. The Pokemon in the top right are some that I never even considered bringing. Hell, I didn't even show all of these encounters because they never did anything. Those in the bottom left are Pokemon I thought were strong, but just didn't add to the team in a meaningful way that I felt deserved a slot over the final 6 that I went with. This Cyndaquil had Protein, but that ability doesn't seem great on Typhlosion because his coverage is pretty limited. And don't get me wrong, the Starmanitan is a monster, but pretty one-dimensional and not as fast or team-oriented as Infernape. Even Drapion and Seviper had a solid shot here, but once I found Mega Gengar, they both kind of fell to the wayside. Then if we take a peek at the Deaded box, I'm just blown away. This is without a doubt the most Pokemon I've ever lost in a run. Also, I know there are 2 eggs in here. I have no clue what they are. My guess is trash data from a randomization quirk, but they just started showing up as I put Pokemon in the death box, which is kind of spooky. Okay, so finally, this is what I'm bringing. A Sub-Protect Moody Gengar, a Tanky/Stally Skarmory, mixed Infernape to pair with Torterra, mixed dual setup Kingdra, specially offensive Dragonite, and finally Torterra to spam Earthquakes and Pledge combo with Infernape. If you would have made any changes here, what would they be? Because honestly, this was a really hard team for me to narrow down. With all the prep out of the way, let's crush the Elite Four. First up is Sydney, and I lead off with Kingdra and Gengar into his Carnivine and Aurorus, and my thought process here is just to be as offensive as possible in the Elite Four. I Mega Evolve Gengar and start off by obliterating the Carnivine with a Sludge Bomb, and then I set up a Focus energy with Kingdra, who is holding a Razor Claw, meaning every single one of her attacks from now on will be a critical hit. The Aurorus just sets up a light screen, and then Sydney sends out Pachirisu. From here, the plan is to protect plus substitute to stack moody boosts on Gengar, which if you don't know how this ability works, it's absolutely disgusting. At the end of each turn, one stat will be raised by 2 stages, and one stat will be lowered by 1 stage. So you're always net gaining stats, and these boosts can even go to evasion in this generation, which is degenerate. Along with moody stacking, I can start spamming critical hit Draco Meteors with Kingdra, which will also stack Moxie boosts for her waterfalls. This kind of offensive pressure is insanely hard to break through since Gengar is already blazing fast, and Kingdra can set up Dragon Dances and just has a really solid type to soak up hits with. I'll cut to the chase here. Kingdra and Gengar end up plowing through Sydney's entire team since they're both constantly stacking up stat boosts, which is exactly what I was hoping for. Next up is Phoebe, and I lead with my same 2 offensive Titans, and she leads with double Tyranitar, which is actually kind of insane. I switch Gengar out for Skarmory to tank hits and go for Focus Energy with Kingdra on the first turn, and thankfully I switched here because Skarm enters the battlefield and immediately takes 2 crunches, which would have absolutely rocked Gengar. I'm gonna continue cutting to the chase when available. From this spot, I have to switch my right slot a few times to avoid damage, first into Infernape, then into Dragonite, but with the permanent critical hits and stacking Moxie boosts, Kingdra also runs away with this fight, to the point where I almost feel bad. I don't, because this is what I built Kingdra to do, but it's absolutely wild to be using a Pokemon that can always critical hit with a Draco Meteor and stack attack boost from Moxie to crush both defensive and specially defensive Pokemon. Okay, so the Glacia fight is next, right? No, wrong. The Kingdra and Gengar show is next, and you better be tuning in because it's a doozy. At this point, I started feeling like maybe I should just not lead with my strongest Pokemon that could absolutely obliterate 90% of teams, but that would go against the spirit of trying to win a challenge. So even though it's a little bit repetitive at this point, just know that I'm crushing these Elite Four members, not just for myself, and not just for you, the YouTube viewers, but also for the buddies that we had to place in the deaded box too soon. I'm doing this for them. Also, it's just a really great feeling to have this much power. We crushed Glacia, and it wasn't even kind of close. The final Elite Four member is Drake, and he leads off with an Aerodactyl and Electros. And once again, I lead off with my broken-ass Pokemon. And while they blow through his Arrow and Eel, and an incoming Landorus Therian that I wasn't even afraid of, I'm forced to switch them out for the last half of Drake's team. He has a Gastrodon and Torterra that have generally good type matchups against Kingdra and Gengar, so I switch into Dragonite and my own Torterra. Dragonite's Ice Beam takes out the enemy Tortoise, and Torterra is able to easily handle the Gastrodon and the incoming Seismitoad because in a shocking twist, both of those Pokemon get dumpstered by grass types. Drake tried. I mean, he even had a legendary Pokemon and a pretty good one. He even got me to switch out my 2 broken Pokemon, but I would take a Moxie Kingdra and a Moody Mega Gengar over most legendaries any day. These Pokemon are absolutely cracked. Now with Drake down, the only thing standing in our way of victory is a battle with Steven, and he might be hotter than us, and he might be cooler than us, and he might be more popular than us, and he might have a better sense of fashion than us, and he might... Well, you know what? I don't remember where I was going with this, but I don't think it was anywhere good for me. We challenge Steven and lead off with, of course, Kingdra and Gengar into his Rotom Heat and Jellicent. On the first turn, I Mega Evolve Gengar and set up a substitute and go for a Dragon Dance with Kingdra. The Rotom breaks Gengar's sub with a Hex, and then the Jellyfish sets up Rain for my Kingdra. I can hardly believe how bad of a play that is. A Waterfall and a Shadow Ball in the next turn are more than enough to wipe Steven's side of the field, bringing out a Yanmega and a Gigalith, who once again go down to the combination of a Waterfall and Shadow Ball. It almost feels too easy, Steven. He sends out his final 2 Pokemon, a Salamence, which I think should be his Mega since it's his ace, and a Pidgeot. On the next turn, a critical hit Draco Meteor shoots his Mega Salamence out of the sky, and a Sludge Bomb is enough to do the same to his Pidgeot, meaning this battle took a grand total of 4 turns. And with that, our insanely broken Pokemon win us the battle and the run. This playthrough was honestly a whirlwind of emotions, from the crippling lows of losing a double-digit number of Pokemon Pokemon in the early and mid game to the absolute high of crushing the Elite Four with almost exclusively 2 Pokemon. I got to experience basically every high and low you can in one run, which is interesting to say the least. Feel free to let me know which Pokemon you thought was the MVP of this run. I feel like there are secretly some unsung heroes here, but I'll let you decide. I really enjoy the randomized runs, and this probably won't be the last one, but let me know if you liked it and the format in which I decided to present it in. I'm sorry there's been so much time in between uploads, but that really all changes right now. I'm gonna go hard for the rest of 2023 because I want that 100K play button so bad. If you want to help me get there, please remember to like the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe if you're new here. It helps out a ton, and you can change your mind later if you realize you hate my content for some reason. Thank you so much for watching these videos, but I'm kind of done here and I have to leave. Bye.